I never expected a text message to unravel my world again. I never thought a family could hold more secrets than the ghosts in my past. But that was before I met Emily's sister. Before her mother smiled so sweetly, I almost didn't notice her eyes watching me like a storm gathering just out of sight. My name is Mercer. I'm 32 years old, and for years I've been running from everything I ever was. The mistakes, the betrayals, the version of myself that learned to trust and was rewarded with heartbreak. I thought I had rebuilt after all that. I thought I was done with drama. Then I got engaged. Then I met her family. Emily was kindness in human form. She walked into my life like sunlight cutting through fog, and I let myself believe in warmth again. That's why I didn't see the tension in her family at first. I just saw their polite smiles and polite conversations when we first moved in together. I thought that was just normal family dynamic. I assumed that because I was happy they must be too. I was wrong. The first sign was at Thanksgiving. Emily had made her grandmother's pecan pie recipe, a gesture that should have melted any chilly atmosphere, but her sister Natalie barely looked at me. Not with coldness exactly, but with a kind of simmering scrutiny that made my chest tighten in ways I couldn't explain. At first I chalked it up to typical in-law wariness. Families are strange, I told myself. They protect their own. But then the whispers started. Not loud. Not direct. Too low to be heard clearly, just long enough for me to catch fragments. A name I knew tied to a chapter of my life I'd paid to forget. A reference to old mistakes I thought no one alive remembered. The way they glanced at me with forced smiles that didn't reach their eyes. It all began to feel like a slow unraveling, like I was being judged more than welcomed. During dessert, Natalie leaned close to her mother, close enough that I heard what she said. "It's him," she whispered. "I told you he was there back then." Her mother didn't say anything, but her eyes flicked to mine for just a second longer. The kind of look that feels like an accusation burning beneath a smile. Something snapped in me that moment. In the cheerful chaos of laughter and clinking silverware, I felt every eye in that room scan me like I was a story everyone had read except me. Later, in the guest bathroom while everyone laughed in the living room, I stared at my reflection and felt the weight of that intensity in her sister's whisper. My breath felt too loud. My heart too fast. My past too close. Emily knocked softly. "You okay?" she asked. I nodded, but when I met her eyes and saw confusion, not concern, I realized she didn't know. Not yet. I wasn't about to burden her with brother-in-law drama on the first holiday at our new apartment. Not yet. So I smiled. And I said, "Yeah, just a lot of pie." She laughed, that easy laugh I fell in love with, and walked out. But I wasn't okay. Not even close. Because what Natalie knew, what her mother suspected, was something I had spent 10 years trying to bury. I had made peace with it, sure, in my mind at least. I thought I had faced it. I thought I had moved on. But then I saw that look in her mother's eyes, that mix of curiosity, holding back a judgment she didn't intend to make obvious, and I realized my past was still alive in other people's minds. And now it was in this family's too. I washed my hands and stared at the tiles, heart pounding. Why would her sister even mention my name? Why bring it up in front of her mother? Why tonight? That whisper was like a seed planted in my mind, tiny, almost invisible, but powerful enough to send roots into every thought that followed. And that was when the text began. I never expected a text message to unravel my world again. I never thought a family could hold more secrets than the ghosts in my past. But that was before I met Emily's sister. Before her mother smiled so sweetly, I almost didn't notice her eyes watching me like a storm gathering just out of sight. My name is Mercer. I'm 32 years old. For years I have been running from everything I ever was, the mistakes, the betrayals, the version of myself that learned to trust and was rewarded with heartbreak. I thought I had rebuilt after all that. I thought I was done with drama. Then I got engaged. Then I met her family. Emily was kindness in human form. She walked into my life like sunlight cutting through fog, and I let myself believe in warmth again. That's why I didn't see the tension in her family at first. I just saw their polite smiles and polite conversations when we first moved in together. I thought that was normal family dynamic. I assumed that because I was happy they must be too. I was wrong. The first sign was at Thanksgiving. Emily had made her grandmother's pecan pie recipe, a gesture that should have melted any chilly atmosphere. But her sister Natalie barely looked at me. Not with coldness exactly, but with a kind of simmering scrutiny that made my chest tighten in ways I could not explain. At first, I chalked it up to typical in-law wariness. Families are strange. They protect their own. But then the whispers started. Not loud. Not direct. Too low to be heard clearly, just long enough for me to catch fragments. A name I knew, tied to a chapter of my life I had paid to forget. A reference to old mistakes I thought no one alive remembered. The way they glanced at me with forced smiles that did not reach their eyes. It all began to feel like a slow unraveling, like I was being judged more than welcomed. During dessert, Natalie leaned close to her mother, close enough that I heard what she said. "It's him," she whispered. "I told you he was there back then." Her mother did not say anything, but her eyes flicked to mine for just a second longer. The kind of look that feels like an accusation burning beneath a smile. Something snapped in me that moment. In the cheerful chaos of laughter and clinking silverware, I felt every eye in that room scan me like I was a story everyone had read except me. Later, in the guest bathroom while everyone laughed in the living room, I stared at my reflection and felt the weight of that intensity in her sister's whisper. My breath felt too loud. My heart too fast. My past too close. Emily knocked softly. "You okay?" she asked. I nodded, but when I met her eyes and saw confusion, not concern, I realized she did not know. Not yet. I was not about to burden her with brother-in-law drama on the first holiday at our new apartment. Not yet. So I smiled. And I said, "Yeah, just a lot of pie." She laughed, that easy laugh I fell in love with, and walked out. But I was not okay. Not even close. Because what Natalie knew, what her mother suspected, was something I had spent 10 years trying to bury. I had made peace with it, sure, in my mind at least. I thought I had faced it. I thought I had moved on. But then I saw that look in her mother's eyes, that mix of curiosity, holding back a judgment she did not intend to make obvious, and I realized my past was still alive in other people's minds. And now it was in this family's too. I washed my hands and stared at the tiles, heart pounding. Why would her sister even mention my name? Why bring it up in front of her mother? Why tonight? That whisper was like a seed planted in my mind, tiny, almost invisible, but powerful enough to send roots into every thought that followed. And that was when the text began. The first one was vague, almost casual, but it made my chest seize. From a number I did not recognize, a message appeared. "We know what you did." I froze, phone trembling in my hand. I read it again. I read it 3 more times, thinking I must have misread it. But the message was plain. Just 4 words. 4 words that threatened to collapse everything I had built. I tried to ignore it. I told myself it was a prank, a mistake, a wrong number. But deep inside I knew better. The timing, the precision, the context, no stranger could know that. Over the next days the texts kept coming. They were never long, never revealing, always enough to keep me anxious, paranoid, and watching. A day would pass, then another message would arrive. "You thought it was gone, it is not." Another night, another message. "She does not know yet." I did not respond. I could not respond. I could not show weakness. Not to whoever this was. Not to Emily. Not to Natalie, not to her mother. But the messages were not the worst part. It was the way Emily's family began to look at me differently. Small gestures, almost imperceptible at first. A pause when I entered the room. A quick glance exchanged between Natalie and her mother when they thought I was not looking. The faint sigh that slipped through her mother's lips when she thought I was distracted. It was as though I was walking through a minefield, and every look, every whisper, every smile could be a trigger that exploded my carefully constructed world. I started seeing connections where there might have been none. Every word from Natalie seemed coded, every casual remark about the past seemed loaded. I began cataloging everything she said, analyzing it late into the night, trying to predict what she knew and what she did not. I could not sleep. I could not eat properly. I could not escape the sensation that my entire life was being watched, judged, waiting for me to stumble. Emily noticed the change. She tried to reach me, to comfort me, but I pulled away. I told her it was stress from work, stress from moving, stress from adjusting to a new life. She believed me, though I could see the doubt in her eyes. And that doubt hurt worse than any accusation. I had loved her too much to let her see the chaos, the panic, the terror that had awakened in me. I had promised myself I would protect her from my past, even if it killed me quietly. Then came the night of the first confrontation. I had barely slept. My phone vibrated with another message: "Meet me now, alone, or she finds out." I froze. My hands shook. Every instinct screamed to ignore it, to call Emily, to run. But the words carried a threat that could not be ignored. The messages were no longer passive, no longer just reminders of what I had done. They had become demands. A choice I had to make. I went. I could not go. My car hummed along streets I barely recognized, my mind replaying every decision I had ever made that could have led to this moment. A lone figure waited at the edge of a dimly lit park, shadows long and distorted. My heart hammered, every muscle taut, every nerve screaming. As I approached, the figure stepped forward. It was Natalie. Not smiling, not polite, not playful. Her eyes were storm clouds. "You think I do not know?" she asked, voice low, almost a growl. "Do you think I have not pieced it together? You lied to her, you lied to all of us, and for what? For yourself." I tried to respond. Words failed me. My throat constricted. Every memory I had tried to bury surged, every regret, every mistake, every betrayal came rushing forward. "You have to tell her," she said. "Before I do, before it ruins everything." Her words were not threats, they were truth. And that truth cut through me like a blade. I realized in that instant that my past had never been mine alone. It had always had consequences. And now it had arrived at my doorstep, wrapped in the smile of the woman I loved, in the silence of her mother, in the storm behind her sister's eyes. I knew what I had to do. The first text hit my phone like a punch to the stomach. 4 simple words: "We know what you did." I stared at the screen, phone trembling in my hand, heart hammering against my ribcage. I wanted to throw it, smash it, erase it, pretend it was a mistake, but deep down I knew it wasn't. Whoever it was had been watching, waiting, and now they had chosen their moment. I forced myself to breathe, trying to push back the panic that threatened to swallow me whole. I could feel the tension coiling in my chest, winding tighter with each second. Every memory I had tried to bury clawed its way back, the mistakes I had paid for, the faces I had tried to forget, the choices that had led me here. I spent the night staring at my phone, every vibration making me jump. Messages arrived in fragments, never fully explaining, always hinting, always enough to keep me on edge. "You thought it was gone. It is not. She does not know. Yet." Each one felt like a stone added to a wall, pressing against me from every direction. I could not sleep, could not eat properly, could not focus at work. I walked through my apartment in a daze, watching Emily move around, her easy warmth, her laughter, and feeling a growing guilt and fear that I was about to destroy everything. She did not know. Not yet. By the third day, I was unraveling. My thoughts looped endlessly around what Natalie and her mother knew, what they suspected, what Emily might find out. I replayed every interaction, every glance, every word they had spoken since I met them. I noticed details I had ignored before, a pause here, a flicker there, the way Natalie's eyes seemed to follow me with calculated precision. The apartment, which had once felt like a sanctuary, now felt like a cage, each wall pressing in, each shadow hiding judgment. Then came the confrontation. I was sitting in the living room pretending to read when Natalie appeared in the doorway. She didn't knock. She didn't smile. Her presence was a storm. "We need to talk," she said. Her voice was calm, but underneath it I could hear the quiet fury, the accumulation of every doubt, every secret, every suspicion. I swallowed, trying to steady my voice. "Talk about what?" She stepped inside, closing the door behind her. "About your past, about Emily, about all of it." My stomach sank. "I don't know what you mean," I said, though my voice betrayed me, trembling despite my best efforts. She shook her head slowly, almost pityingly. "Don't lie to me, don't pretend, you think we haven't noticed. The whispers, the looks, the tension, it's all connected. You have secrets, and secrets like yours can destroy people, Derek, people you love." She took a step closer, her eyes boring into mine. I felt the truth of her words, felt the weight of everything I had tried to bury. My past was no longer mine alone. It had followed me, shadowed me, and now it was here in this apartment, in this family, in the eyes of the woman I loved. I tried to explain, to justify, to contain it. But the words would not come. The memories, the mistakes, the betrayals I had survived alone now pressed against me with such force I could barely breathe. Natalie did not move, did not speak, just waited, watching, her expression a mixture of anger and sorrow and something I could not name. I realized then that nothing would stay buried. Not here. Not now. Not with Emily, with Natalie, with her mother watching, judging, waiting. The only choice I had left was to reveal everything, to face the consequences, to tell Emily the truth before someone else forced it out. But even that was terrifying. I had spent years rebuilding, creating a life free from the shadows of my past, and now I stood at the edge of it all, collapsing again. That night I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, phone clutched in my hand. Messages kept arriving, each one a reminder that time was slipping, that the truth was not mine to control. I watched Emily sleep, the soft rise and fall of her chest, the peacefulness I had almost forgotten existed in my life. And I felt a rush of fear so sharp it took my breath away. If I told her, could she forgive me? Could she understand? Could she still love me once she knew what I had done, who I had been, the mistakes I had made? The following days were a tense dance. I moved carefully around the apartment, careful of every word, every gesture, every look. Natalie watched me constantly, her silence more punishing than any accusation. Her mother smiled politely, but the weight in her eyes told me she knew more than she let on. Emily remained blissfully unaware, her trust and love a fragile shield I feared to shatter. And through it all the messages continued, reminders that my past was alive, breathing, waiting. It was during dinner one evening that the tipping point arrived. Emily had prepared my favorite meal, trying to lift the tension I could not escape. I sat across from her, fork in hand, pretending to eat, pretending to be present, but my mind was elsewhere, turning over every detail of the secrets, the lies, the whispers. Natalie sat at the far end of the table, silent, her eyes occasionally flicking to mine, calculating, waiting. Finally she spoke, soft but sharp. "You can't hide forever," she said. "Not from us, not from her, not from yourself." Her words cut through the room like a knife. Emily looked at me, confusion etched across her face. "What do you mean?" she asked. Her voice was gentle, filled with concern, filled with love, filled with trust I feared I might lose. I could not answer. I could not speak. And I realized then that silence was no longer an option. The truth had to come out, and it had to come out tonight, before it was too late. I took a deep breath, feeling the panic and fear and guilt and love all collide inside me. "Emily," I began, voice shaking despite my effort to steady it. "There's something I need to tell you, something about my past, something I've tried to bury but I can't anymore." Her eyes widened, worry blooming like a sudden storm. "Derek, what is it?" I looked at her, at the woman who had brought light back into my life, and I knew that what I said next would change everything. "It's about who I used to be, the mistakes I made, and the people I hurt, and it's about why you need to know before anyone else tells you." Natalie leaned back, her expression unreadable, and her mother watched quietly, silently, the air thick with anticipation. My chest tightened. My hands shook. I felt the full weight of the past pressing down, the consequences I had evaded for so long finally catching up with me. But in that moment I also felt something else, something fragile and hopeful. I realized that if I could face this, if I could tell the truth, maybe there was a chance to rebuild, to protect Emily, to find a way forward. Maybe. And so I began. I told her everything, every mistake, every betrayal, every moment I had spent running, hiding, trying to survive my own life. I spoke in fragmented sentences, pausing to catch my breath, watching her face for reactions, praying she would not recoil, praying she would understand. She listened, eyes wide, mouth slightly parted, a mixture of shock, fear, confusion, and something deeper I could not name. When I finished, silence fell. Heavy, suffocating silence. Natalie's expression softened slightly, her eyes still sharp, still watchful but less stormy. Her mother's face remained calm, but the weight behind it shifted, as though she was reassessing everything she had thought she knew. And Emily looked at me, tears brimming in her eyes, and for a moment I feared the worst. Then she reached across the table and took my hand. "We'll figure this out," she said, voice trembling, soft but certain. "Together." And in that moment, amidst the fear, the guilt, the anger, and the tension, I felt a flicker of hope. It would not be easy. The past would not let go, and Natalie and her mother would not stop watching, questioning, testing. But for the first time in years, I realized that maybe, just maybe, I had a chance to survive this, to protect the woman I loved, and to finally confront the ghosts that had haunted me for so long. The texts slowed after that night. They never fully stopped, reminders of the past and the power it still held over me. But with Emily's hand in mine, with the fragile trust we had rebuilt, I began to believe that the storm could pass, that secrets could be faced, and that love, no matter how tested, could endure. The next morning I woke before Emily, the apartment quiet except for the soft hum of the heater. The messages had not stopped entirely, but there was a lull, a tense calm that felt heavier than any storm. I sat on the edge of the bed, phone in hand, staring at the blank screen as if waiting for it to speak again. My thoughts, however, were louder than any vibration, louder than any alert. I thought about Natalie, about her mother, about the weight of every secret I had carried alone. I thought about Emily, about the warmth in her eyes, about the trust she had placed in me, fragile as glass. I dressed slowly, moving almost automatically, each step deliberate, each motion weighed with caution. Breakfast was a quiet affair. Emily hummed softly as she prepared coffee, the smell of toasted bread filling the kitchen, and for a moment it felt like life before the storm, like life could be ordinary again. I wanted to believe it. I wanted to pretend. But the tension lingered, curled around me, unseen but impossible to ignore. By mid-morning, the messages resumed. Another cryptic text arrived: "Choices have consequences, don't forget." I stared at it, my stomach tightening, my pulse quickening. Every word was calculated, deliberate, a reminder that the past was still alive and waiting. I set the phone down and walked to the window, looking out over the city as if the skyline could offer me guidance or reprieve. It did not. The streets below were alive with people, indifferent to my struggles, unaware of the storm pressing in on my life from within the walls of this apartment, from within the eyes of a family I was only beginning to understand. By afternoon I was pacing. Natalie had appeared again, this time unannounced, standing in the doorway with the kind of calm authority that could command a room. "You can't keep hiding," she said simply. Her voice was measured, precise, every word chosen to cut through hesitation. "Emily deserves the truth, all of it, and you can't protect her by hiding anymore." I closed my eyes, the weight of her words pressing down, heavier than any stone I had carried for years. "I'm trying," I admitted, voice low. "I'm trying to do the right thing, but it's not that simple. You don't understand." "I understand more than you think," she interrupted. "I've seen what secrets can do, I've lived with them, and if you think you can bury this and move on, you're wrong. You're going to have to face it, Derek, whether you like it or not." She stepped closer, the tension in the room building with every breath. "And I'm not the only one watching." Her mother entered then, silently, with the quiet presence of someone who had seen everything before it happened. She said nothing, but her gaze lingered on me long enough to make my knees feel weak. There was judgment there, yes, but also something else. Expectation, perhaps, or the unspoken demand that I rise to the occasion, face the consequences, and own the man I had tried to hide. Emily walked in moments later, sensing the gravity in the air. "What's going on?" she asked softly, eyes darting between us. I felt a surge of panic, of desperation, of love all at once. I wanted to protect her from the truth, but I knew it was too late. The moment had arrived. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my shaking hands and my racing heart. "I need to tell you something," I said, my voice firmer than I felt. "Something about my past, something I've tried to bury, but it's time you know before someone else tells you." Her eyes widened, a mix of fear and trust, and I felt the full weight of the responsibility I carried. Natalie and her mother watched silently, their presence heavy, unrelenting. I swallowed, forcing the words out. "Years ago I made mistakes, choices I regret, things I did that hurt people. I thought I could leave it behind, move on, but it seems the past has a way of catching up." Emily's lips trembled. "What kind of mistakes?" she asked. Her voice was small, fragile, but demanding honesty. I nodded, forcing myself to meet her gaze, to own every word. "Serious mistakes," I said. "Mistakes that I have lived with, that have shaped me, and mistakes that someone close to me has now discovered. They are part of who I am, but they are not the man I want to be with you. I need you to know the truth, all of it, before it becomes someone else's story to tell." The room was silent after that, thick with anticipation. Natalie's expression softened slightly, her eyes no longer stormy but still vigilant. Her mother remained quiet, inscrutable, the weight of her gaze like a silent verdict. Emily stood frozen, processing, breathing shallow and quick, and then slowly she reached for my hand. "We'll get through this," she said, voice quivering but steady. "Together, no matter what." Her words cut through the fear, the anxiety, the weight of the past, and for the first time in days I felt a flicker of hope. It would not be easy. The road ahead would be littered with challenges, with confrontations, with truths that might hurt. But for the first time I knew I was not alone. The following weeks were a delicate dance of reconciliation, revelation, and repair. Natalie tested me constantly, her scrutiny sharp, relentless, forcing me to confront the man I had been and the man I wanted to become. Her mother monitored quietly, silently guiding Emily through the storm of knowledge and emotion, offering counsel, protection, and unspoken warnings. The messages did not cease entirely, but they grew less threatening, more like reminders, prompts for reflection, for action, for honesty. Emily and I rebuilt our life cautiously, every conversation layered with honesty, every gesture measured, every moment a negotiation between trust and fear. I found myself thinking constantly about the consequences of my past actions, about the lives I had touched, the people I had hurt, and the responsibility I carried moving forward. I could not change what had happened, could not undo the mistakes, but I could strive to be better, to act with integrity, to protect the love I had fought to preserve. It was not simple. It was not painless. Each encounter with Natalie and her mother reminded me that the past never truly dies, that secrets have a way of lingering, of shaping the present in ways subtle and profound. Yet with Emily by my side, with the truth laid bare, I discovered something remarkable. Even amidst guilt, fear, and consequence, there was room for forgiveness, room for growth, room for a life rebuilt on honesty and effort rather than deception and avoidance. And slowly, day by day, the tension began to ease. Not completely, not entirely, but enough that laughter returned to our apartment, enough that the sense of watching and judgment faded into cautious observation, enough that I began to feel like I could breathe again without fear of collapse. Emily and I discovered a new rhythm, one defined by openness, by confronting what was difficult, by supporting each other through the storms of life. The messages eventually stopped. The shadows of the past receded, though they never fully disappeared. I learned to live with the weight of history without letting it define every action, every thought, every relationship. Natalie's scrutiny became more tempered, more understanding, and her mother's silent observation transformed into quiet guidance and occasional counsel. Emily remained my anchor, my reminder that love, when tested, could endure, and that the past, no matter how dark, need not dictate the future. Life did not return to simplicity, but it returned to reality. A reality where honesty mattered more than perfection, where trust was fragile but worth protecting, where mistakes were acknowledged but no longer allowed to control the present. And in that reality, amidst the lingering tension and quiet lessons of the past, I found a kind of peace. Not a perfect peace, but a real one, earned through confrontation, through disclosure, through love tested and survived. And as I lay beside Emily that night, holding her hand, listening to the steady rhythm of her breathing, I realized that even in a world shaped by secrets, betrayal, and consequence, there was room for redemption, for trust, for life rebuilt on truth. My past had arrived, uninvited, unrelenting, but it had also forced me to face who I was, who I had been, and who I could become. And in that knowledge, in that reckoning, I finally understood what it meant to move forward, to survive, and to love despite everything. The following morning, the apartment felt quieter, almost deceptively so. Emily was in the kitchen, humming softly as she made coffee, the aroma filling the air. I sat at the counter, my hands wrapped around a mug I hadn't noticed I had picked up, mind spinning with every memory, every text, every glance exchanged over the past weeks. Natalie had not appeared yet, and her absence was almost as unsettling as her presence. Her mother, silent as ever, watched quietly from the corner, eyes sharp, calculating. I took a sip of coffee, hoping the warmth would settle the unease in my chest. It did not. My phone vibrated on the counter. Another message. I froze before reaching for it. The words were simple, almost clinical. You can't undo the past, you can only face it. I exhaled slowly, feeling the weight of it settle like stones in my stomach. I had faced a portion of it with Emily already, but the lingering shadows of my previous mistakes still reached far beyond her understanding. Emily approached, placing a gentle hand on my shoulder. "You've been distant," she said softly. "I know you're trying to protect me, but you can't do it alone." Her words, tender but firm, pierced the armor I had been hiding behind. I wanted to speak, to tell her everything, but the truth was still jagged in my mind, still sharp around the edges. I could not yet untangle all of it for her. Before I could answer, Natalie entered, her steps deliberate, almost predatory. She did not acknowledge Emily. Her gaze locked onto me, unwavering, assessing, as if she could see every lie I had ever told and every regret I had carried. "You need to come with me," she said, voice low but commanding. My stomach twisted. "Where?" I asked, though I knew it was not a question I could refuse. "To talk privately," she replied, her tone leaving no room for negotiation. My pulse quickened. I glanced at Emily, whose expression was a mixture of curiosity and concern. She opened her mouth, perhaps to protest, perhaps to ask questions, but I shook my head subtly. This was something I had to face alone. We left the apartment, stepping into the crisp morning air. Natalie led the way, confident, deliberate, as if she had been rehearsing this encounter for weeks. I followed, every nerve on edge, wondering how much she knew, how much she intended to reveal, and what consequences awaited me. We reached a small park nearby, empty except for the sound of leaves rustling in the wind. She stopped and turned to face me, expression unreadable. "You have been running," she said, finally breaking the silence. "From mistakes, from guilt, from accountability, and now it's all catching up. You think you can control it by telling Emily some truths, by hiding others, by managing appearances. But secrets like yours are persistent. They find their way out whether you want them to or not." I swallowed hard, feeling the rawness of her words. "I know," I admitted. "I know I can't run anymore. That's why I told Emily what I did, but there's more, so much more that I haven't even begun to process." Natalie studied me, her eyes piercing. "Then you will tell me," she said. "Everything, and I will decide whether it stays between us or reaches others. Understand?" I nodded, feeling the weight of trust, of threat, of judgment in her words. I began to speak, recounting the full extent of my past mistakes, of choices I regretted, of moments that had haunted me, of the people I had hurt, and the reasons I had tried to bury it all. The telling was exhaustive, painful. Every word felt like an excavation, unearthing pieces of myself I had long tried to leave behind. Natalie listened silently, expression unreadable, until finally she spoke. "This is heavy," she said. "And it explains a lot, but it also shows me that you are not the same man you were. You are trying, that counts for something." I exhaled, relief and apprehension mingling. The tension eased slightly, though the weight of my past was still present, lingering like shadows. Natalie nodded toward the apartment. "Go back, face Emily, live honestly. It will not be easy, but you have started." Returning home, I found Emily waiting, her eyes full of questions, full of care, full of something fragile yet enduring. I stepped inside, heart pounding, realizing that the confrontation with Natalie had shifted something inside me. I could no longer hide. I could no longer run. And maybe, just maybe, facing it head-on with Emily meant a chance at something genuine, unbroken, and lasting. The days that followed were filled with small acts of rebuilding. Conversations that had been avoided for years took place. Mistakes were acknowledged, apologies offered, forgiveness tentatively extended. The family remained present, watchful, but slowly, trust began to take root again. The messages ceased entirely, the shadows of the past retreated, and a cautious hope grew in its place. I realized that life would never be simple. The past would always linger, and secrets could resurface at any moment. But I also understood that honesty, accountability, and love could withstand the weight of history. Emily's hand in mine, her belief in me despite everything, became a beacon. The storms I had feared were still possible, but I had learned to face them, to stand firm, to act with integrity. And in that fragile, tentative peace, I discovered something profound. I was no longer running. I was no longer hiding. I was living fully and openly, in a world shaped by the past but not dominated by it. And for the first time in years, I felt the possibility of a future unburdened, a life rebuilt on truth, trust, in the fragile, enduring power of love. The next week was a delicate balancing act. I woke each morning with a knot in my stomach, uncertain whether the world would be calm or erupt around me. Emily moved through the apartment as if nothing had changed, though her questions, gentle and probing, reminded me that she was learning to navigate a new version of me, one shadowed by my past. Natalie watched too, always watching, silently testing whether I had truly changed, whether I was worthy of trust. I tried to focus at work, but every message, every lingering thought about Emily's family distracted me. The office felt like a different world, disconnected from the tension that hung in my apartment, yet the weight followed me. When I received another text, short, cryptic, I froze. "Choices define you, don't fail her." I could not tell if it was Natalie, someone else from my past, or a lingering threat designed to keep me on edge. My pulse raced, and I knew I had no choice but to face the consequences rather than run. Emily approached me that evening as I sat in silence on the couch, phone ignored on the table. "Talk to me," she said softly, kneeling beside me. "Whatever it is, we can face it together." Her presence was calming yet urgent, insisting that I confront the truth fully. I exhaled, knowing she deserved the whole story, not the fragments I had previously shared. I began recounting the earliest mistakes that had shaped my life, explaining how trust had been broken, how poor decisions had cost people I cared about more than I had understood at the time. Emily listened, her fingers threading through mine, steadying me as the words poured out, each one heavier than the last. I admitted fears I had never voiced, insecurities I had carried in silence, and the shame that had nearly consumed me. When I finished, she remained quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "I understand why you hid so much, but you don't have to hide anymore. I want all of you, even the parts that scare you the most." Her words struck me deeply, washing over the fear I had carried alone for so long. I felt the first true sense of relief since this all began, though I knew the past could still stir trouble at any moment. Later that night, a knock on the door broke the fragile peace. Natalie stood there, expression unreadable. "I heard the conversation," she said simply. I nodded, bracing for confrontation. Instead, she stepped inside, closing the door behind her. "You're being honest, that counts for something. But honesty is only the beginning. You still have to prove that you can live with it, that you can be trusted, that you can protect what matters most." Her mother appeared behind her, silent as ever, observing. I realized that the family dynamic was shifting. The scrutiny had not vanished, but it had become tempered with a cautious openness, an acknowledgement that mistakes could be confessed, that trust could be rebuilt. The air was tense, yet within it there was potential, the possibility of reconciliation, the chance to move forward together. over the following weeks, small victories emerged. Laughter returned to the apartment, moments of genuine connection replaced moments of tension, and Emily and I discovered a rhythm careful but steady. Natalie's sharp observations continued, but they now carried less accusation and more guidance, challenging me to confront my past without judgment clouding her assessment. Her mother remained quietly vigilant, occasionally offering counsel that helped navigate the intricate dynamics of family, past and present. Then came an unexpected visit from someone from my past, a figure whose presence forced me to face a chapter I had hoped never to reopen. The encounter was tense, fraught with reminders of the consequences I had long evaded. But for the first time, I did not run. I spoke openly, took responsibility, and faced the repercussions with Emily at my side. The experience reinforced the lessons I had been learning. Truth, accountability, and love were stronger than fear, stronger than silence, stronger than secrets. Life gradually began to feel more manageable. The messages stopped entirely. Emily's faith in me grew stronger. Natalie's scrutiny became a supportive force rather than a threatening one. Her mother's quiet observation transformed into cautious approval. And I, for the first time in years, could breathe without the constant weight of impending exposure pressing down on me. One evening, Emily and I sat on the balcony, watching the city lights shimmer in the distance. I took her hand, feeling the warmth, the connection, the stability that had been absent for so long. "We've been through a lot," I said softly, "but I think we're finally getting somewhere." She smiled, eyes glimmering with a mixture of relief and determination. "Yes," she said. "Together." The past had come for me, uninvited, relentless, and at times terrifying. But it had also forced me to confront who I was, what I valued, and how I wanted to live. I understood that mistakes were permanent, but growth was possible. Redemption was earned through action, honesty, and love. And in that understanding, I found a fragile yet enduring peace, the knowledge that even when shadows of the past appeared, they could be faced, survived, and transformed into a foundation for the life I wanted to build. In the quiet moments when the city hummed below and Emily rested beside me, I realized that the most powerful thing I had discovered was not escape, not hiding, not secrecy. It was courage, the courage to face the past, to reveal the truth, to accept consequences, and to trust that love could endure even when tested. And with that courage, I finally felt whole enough to move forward, ready to meet whatever challenges might come next, with Emily, with her family, and with myself, standing firmly in a life rebuilt from honesty, resilience, and hope. The days turned into weeks and the weeks into months. Every interaction with Emily's family became a test of endurance, understanding, and compassion. Conversations that had once been fraught with tension became opportunities to strengthen trust. The shadows of my past lingered but no longer dictated my every move. I learned to navigate their expectations, their watchful eyes, and the occasional sharp remark from Natalie, with patience and integrity. The ultimate lesson, one that I carried into every choice and every conversation, was that love and trust were not granted. They were earned, maintained, and protected. Emily's presence was a constant reminder that transparency, courage, and commitment could withstand even the most persistent echoes of history. And as I looked forward to the life we were building, I finally understood that facing the past did not weaken us. It gave us the strength to create a future unburdened by fear, full of possibility, and defined not by the mistakes we had made, but by the way we chose to live afterward. Weeks turned into months, and the rhythm of our life slowly stabilized. Emily and I fell into a careful routine, learning to navigate the delicate balance of love and truth. Every morning I woke to the sound of her coffee brewing, the aroma filling the apartment like a promise of normalcy. But even in those ordinary moments, the weight of my past lingered like a shadow stretching just beyond the light. I could not forget Natalie's gaze, her mother's quiet judgment, the way those cryptic texts had kept me on edge. One afternoon while Emily was at work, Natalie came to the apartment unannounced. She didn't knock or smile, she simply entered, standing in the living room like a storm in human form. "You're not done yet," she said. Her voice was calm, precise, and I immediately felt my chest tighten. "There are things you haven't faced, people from your past who haven't forgotten. You need to deal with them before they deal with you." I nodded, feeling the tension in my stomach coil tighter. "I know," I said. "I'm trying, I've faced some of it, but there's still more." She studied me for a long moment, her eyes scanning every expression, every twitch of muscle, as if searching for a hint of deceit. "Trying isn't enough," she said finally. "Action is, and if you don't act, it won't just hurt you, it'll hurt Emily too." Her words hung in the air like a warning. I had tried to shield Emily from the consequences of my past, but Natalie's presence reminded me that some things could not be hidden forever. I realized then that I had to confront everything directly, to face every person, every mistake, every lingering threat, not for myself, but for the woman I loved and the life we were trying to build. The next day, I reached out to a figure from my past, someone whose presence had once been a source of pain and chaos. I arranged to meet at a small cafe, neutral ground. Sitting across from them, I felt a mixture of fear and resolve. The conversation was tense, full of reminders of the consequences I had long tried to ignore, but I spoke openly, admitting mistakes, acknowledging harm, and taking responsibility. For the first time in years, I felt a sense of control returning, a small measure of peace in facing what I had long avoided. Returning home, I found Emily waiting, eyes filled with concern. I told her everything about the meeting, about the difficult conversations, about the lingering consequences. She listened patiently, sometimes flinching at the revelations, sometimes holding my hand tightly, a steady anchor in the storm of my life. When I finished, she whispered, "You're doing the right thing, it's hard, but it's worth it." Life slowly became a series of careful steps forward. Emily's family observed, sometimes critically, sometimes approvingly, but the tension that had once seemed insurmountable began to ease. Natalie's sharp scrutiny softened as she saw my efforts, my willingness to face the past, and my dedication to protecting Emily from its lingering shadows. Her mother remained quietly vigilant, but even her stern presence became less threatening and more a guide, an unseen hand helping to navigate the complex terrain of truth, trust, and reconciliation. Then one evening, a long-forgotten friend from my past appeared at the apartment door. Their presence brought a flood of memories, both painful and instructive. We spoke late into the night, revisiting choices, regrets, and the paths that had led me here. The conversation was exhausting, but it was also healing, a reminder that confronting the past was necessary to secure the future. Emily watched from the doorway, silent and patient, and when I turned to her she smiled faintly, her trust a fragile but unshakable bridge. I realized then that the life we were building was not defined by avoidance or secrecy, but by courage, honesty, and the willingness to face whatever storms arose together. The days passed, each one reinforcing lessons learned. That love required transparency, that trust had to be nurtured, that mistakes could not be erased but could be redeemed through action. The messages that had haunted me for weeks ceased entirely. The shadows of my past remained, but they no longer dictated my every thought, every movement. I had learned to navigate their presence, to honor their lessons without succumbing to fear. Emily and I began planning small trips, moments away from the apartment, moments where the past could not intrude. Each outing was a test, a rehearsal for a life unburdened by shadows. We laughed, we argued, we held each other close, and each experience strengthened the bond between us. Months later, during a quiet evening on the balcony, I watched Emily's face illuminated by the city lights, her expression calm and trusting. I felt the culmination of all the lessons learned, the cost of mistakes, the burden of secrets, the weight of judgment, and the power of honesty. I realized that the most profound growth had come not from avoiding the past, but from confronting it fully, accepting its consequences, and choosing to build a life defined by truth and love. I took Emily's hand in mine, feeling the warmth, the steady heartbeat, and the trust that had survived the storm. "We've been through so much," I said softly, "but I feel like we can finally breathe again." She smiled, eyes glimmering with hope and determination. "Yes," she said. "Together we can face anything." And in that moment, I understood fully that the past, no matter how relentless, no matter how dark, could not destroy what we were building. Love, trust, courage, and honesty could endure even the most persistent echoes of history. I had faced the consequences, revealed the truths, and taken responsibility. And now, standing in the quiet glow of city lights with Emily by my side, I finally felt ready to live, to love, and to move forward without fear, knowing that the future could be shaped not by mistakes, but by the choices I made from this moment onward. The calm was fragile, yes, but it was real. And for the first time in years, I believed that the life we had fought to protect could flourish, that love tested by fire could endure, and that even amidst lingering shadows, there was room for hope, trust, and redemption. Weeks flowed into months, and the apartment, once heavy with tension, now felt like a home. Each day was a testament to resilience. Every shared laugh, every quiet conversation, every moment of trust rebuilt reinforced the fragile foundation we had created. Mercer, the man who had run from his past for decades, was finally learning to stand firmly in the present, guided by love, honesty, and the unwavering support of the woman who had illuminated his darkest hours. The past had arrived, relentless and uninvited, but in confronting it fully, I had discovered something greater, the capacity for forgiveness, the strength of accountability, and the power of enduring love. Emily's hand in mine was no longer just a comfort. It was a promise, a living testament that even the darkest histories could be met with courage, honesty, and hope. The next morning, I woke to the sound of rain tapping against the windows. The city outside shimmered with wet reflections, streets slick and glimmering, but inside the apartment felt heavy with unspoken tension. Emily was still asleep, curled under the blankets, her presence both a comfort and a reminder of what was at stake. I poured myself coffee, trained to steady the trembling in my hands, and sat at the counter staring out at the gray skyline. Then my phone buzzed. A new message. I froze before picking it up. 4 words, "We're still watching." My chest tightened. The text had stopped for months, a quiet calm after the storm of revelations and confrontations with Emily's family. Yet here was a reminder that the past never truly let go. Someone I had thought removed from my life, was back, observing, waiting, reminding me that the consequences of old mistakes could arrive at any moment. I didn't know who it was. The message offered no name, no clue, only the persistent pressure of accountability. I debated ignoring it, hoping it would fade, but deep down I knew that silence was no longer an option. The past had learned persistence. I had to act. By midday, I had reached out to an old associate from years ago, someone whose involvement in my history had always been complicated. Meeting at a small, crowded cafe, the conversation was cautious, tense, filled with the undercurrent of unsaid threats. I explained my current life, my intentions, my desire to shield Emily, and my commitment to owning the consequences of past actions. They listened, eyes calculating, then finally nodded. "You can't undo what's happened," they said, voice low, almost a warning. "But you can control how it affects the present. Don't let it consume you or her." Returning home, I felt a mix of relief and lingering anxiety. Emily noticed my absence, the distant expression I wore. "What happened?" she asked softly, sensing something I could not yet articulate. I paused, knowing I could not tell her everything, not yet. Some of the shadows were still too close, too raw, still waiting for the right moment. "It's complicated," I said instead. "But I'm handling it." She nodded, trusting me, and that trust was both comforting and terrifying. The tension in the apartment persisted, subtle but ever-present. Natalie arrived that evening, her demeanor calm yet assertive, eyes sharp as she scrutinized my every word and movement. "You haven't told Emily everything," she said bluntly. "I know you're protecting her, but she deserves the full truth. Secrets have a way of surfacing at the worst time." Her mother appeared behind her, quiet as always, observing without comment. I swallowed, feeling the weight of their judgment. "I'm aware," I said, voice firm despite the anxiety rising within me. "And I will tell her, but timing matters. I need to ensure it's done carefully for her sake and mine." Natalie's eyes softened just slightly, a hint of acknowledgement that my intentions were not malicious. "Be careful," she said. "The past doesn't forgive mistakes easily." The next few days were a delicate dance of preparation. I researched, planned, rehearsed conversations in my head, and tried to anticipate questions Emily might ask. Each step reminded me of how much I had to lose, how fragile the trust I had rebuilt truly was. And yet, I felt a strange steadiness, a resolve I had never known in all the years I had been running from the consequences of my choices. Finally, one evening, Emily returned home after work, her expression bright yet tired, completely unaware of the storm that had begun to stir again. I guided her to the living room, hands slightly trembling, heart pounding. "Emily," I began, voice low but steady, "there's something we need to discuss, something from my past, and it's time I tell you everything." Her eyes widened, concern flickering across her features. "Everything?" she asked softly. I nodded, feeling the gravity of the moment settle over us like a storm cloud. I began recounting details that had long been buried, mistakes that had consequences still alive, choices I had regretted, and the persistent shadows that had returned to remind me of what I had tried to escape. Emily listened quietly, eyes wide, absorbing each word, processing the revelations with a mixture of fear, trust, and compassion. I watched her carefully, noting every reaction, every tremor of emotion, and I realized that even with the truth revealed, our bond could survive if nurtured with honesty and patience. When I finished, silence filled the apartment. Natalie and her mother had joined us quietly, their presence steady, not intrusive. Natalie spoke first, her tone measured but clear. "You've done what you should have done a long time ago, faced it, owned it, and protected her as best you could. That counts for something." Her mother nodded silently, approval hidden behind her calm demeanor. Emily reached for my hand, her touch grounding me. "We'll get through this," she said, voice steady despite the shock in her eyes. "Together, I believe in us." Her words washed over me, a soothing balm to the lingering tension, and I realized that the storm, though far from over, had shifted. The messages stopped. The shadows of the past persisted, but no longer dominated my every thought. Life returned to a new rhythm, one built on honesty, accountability, and the fragile strength of trust. Natalie and her mother, once sources of intense scrutiny, now offered tempered guidance, testing me not to punish, but to ensure that the man I claimed to be aligned with the man I had become. Weeks passed. Each day was a test of resilience, patience, and integrity. Emily and I shared quiet moments, small victories, laughter, and reflection. Slowly, the apartment transformed from a space heavy with tension to a home defined by cautious peace, trust, and love. The lessons of the past lingered, reminders of mistakes and consequences, but they no longer dictated my every choice. One evening, I stood on the balcony with Emily, the city lights stretching endlessly before us, reflections dancing in puddles on the wet streets below. "We've been through so much," I said softly, feeling the weight of every trial and triumph. "But I think we're finally finding our footing." Emily smiled, eyes glimmering with hope. "Yes," she said. "Together we can face anything." For the first time in years, I believed it. The past had arrived, relentless and uninvited, but by confronting it fully, by owning the truth and accepting the consequences, I had discovered something greater than fear: resilience, redemption, and a love that could endure even the darkest echoes of history. Standing there hand in hand with Emily, I understood that life would never be simple, that mistakes would linger, that judgment would remain. But honesty, courage, and trust provided a foundation far stronger than the shadows that had once threatened to consume me. And for the first time, I felt ready to live fully, to love without reservation, and to face whatever challenges might come, secure in the knowledge that the life I was building, with Emily by my side, could survive anything. The days that followed were filled with continued growth. Conversations that once caused tension became opportunities to strengthen trust. Occasional confrontations with Natalie and her mother tested my integrity, but each one also reaffirmed the lessons learned. Accountability, honesty, and perseverance were more powerful than fear. The past had shaped me, but it no longer controlled me. Emily and I began planning small trips, moments away from the apartment where the past could not intrude, moments where we could simply be together. Each journey, each shared experience solidified our bond, transforming fragile trust into enduring connection. The apartment, once heavy with scrutiny and tension, became a sanctuary of cautious peace. Shadows of the past remained, reminders of lessons learned, but they no longer defined every moment. I had confronted mistakes, accepted consequences, and embraced the uncertain but hopeful path ahead. And as Emily rested her head on my shoulder one quiet evening, I understood the truth that had eluded me for so long. The past, no matter how relentless, could not destroy what we were building. Love, honesty, courage, and trust could endure even the darkest shadows. I had faced the storm, survived it, and emerged with a future shaped not by fear but by choices, by action, and by the enduring power of love. The calm we'd begun to feel was fragile, like the surface of a pond after a sudden storm. Even as Emily and I tried to rebuild our routines, subtle reminders of the past crept into our lives. One evening while Emily cooked dinner, I found another message on my phone. No words this time, just a photo, one from years ago showing a scene I had hoped no one remembered. My hands trembled, stomach tightening. Whoever had sent it had access, had been watching, and the fear it reignited was immediate. I showed Emily the photo reluctantly and she froze. "Who would do this?" she whispered, her hand brushing mine. I shook my head, unable to answer. Part of me wanted to hide, to protect her from the knowledge, but I also knew I could not keep secrets any longer. We needed a plan, and that meant facing this new threat head-on. Natalie arrived late that night, as if she had anticipated the situation. She didn't ask questions, she simply studied the photo, her expression unreadable. "It's back," she said finally. "Someone from your past isn't done. They've been waiting for the right moment to strike." Her mother appeared behind her, silent and imposing, yet I could see the subtle concern in her eyes. I felt cornered, trapped between past mistakes and present threats, yet I knew I had no choice but to confront it. "I'll deal with it," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I have to." Natalie's gaze bore into me, sharp and assessing. "You'd better," she said. "If this gets out of hand, it won't just be your life that suffers. Emily's is at stake too." The warning was clear, and the weight of responsibility pressed down on me like a physical force. The next days became a blur of research, investigation, and strategy. I tracked contacts, revisited old connections, and attempted to anticipate who could be behind the renewed harassment. Emily helped where she could, asking questions, offering support, and helping me remain grounded despite the fear and tension. Each night when we finally returned home, we sat together in silence, listening to the rain against the windows, holding onto the fragile sense of safety we were fighting to preserve. One afternoon, an unexpected visitor arrived at our apartment. A woman older than Natalie, with eyes that seemed to pierce directly through me. She introduced herself as someone connected to the photo, someone with knowledge of my past actions and their consequences. I felt my heart sink as she stepped inside, scanning the room as if searching for signs of weakness. "I know what you've done," she said softly, almost kindly, yet every word carried the weight of judgment. "I also know what you're trying to do now. You can't change the past, but you can control the future, and if you fail to act, it will cost you everything." I swallowed, feeling both the fear and the resolve hardening inside me. I could not allow my past to destroy what I had now, what Emily and I were building. The days that followed were tense, full of careful conversations, subtle investigations, and preparations for potential confrontations. Natalie remained vigilant, sometimes stepping in to test me, other times offering guidance. Her mother stayed close, silently observing, yet providing an unspoken shield of protection for Emily and the life we were trying to preserve. Through it all, Emily remained a constant presence, her faith in me unwavering even when fear threatened to overtake reason. "We're in this together," she said one night, resting her head on my shoulder. "Whatever comes, we face it side by side." Her words, simple but powerful, became my anchor, reminding me why I had to endure, why I had to confront, and why I could not run. Weeks later, the source of the renewed threats was revealed. Someone from my past, someone I had wronged and thought I had reconciled with, had resurfaced, determined to exact revenge or gain leverage over me. The confrontation was inevitable. Natalie and her mother accompanied me to a neutral location, Emily staying behind but close, reachable at any moment. The meeting was intense. I faced accusations, reminders of mistakes, and threats designed to intimidate. But I no longer cowered. I spoke honestly, acknowledged every error, and asserted that my life had moved forward, that Emily was not to be dragged into past misdeeds. The confrontation ended without violence, but not without consequence. The lesson that the past, though confronted, could still ripple through the present. Returning home, the tension lingered, but the storm had passed. Emily hugged me tightly, whispering, "You faced it, we survived." The words were simple, yet they carried the weight of relief, trust, and a renewed sense of security. Natalie and her mother observed, approving subtly, acknowledging that my actions had proven the depth of my commitment to honesty, accountability, and protection. Life began to settle into a new rhythm. Messages ceased entirely. Threats disappeared. The apartment, once heavy with scrutiny and tension, became a sanctuary. Emily and I rebuilt routines, planned small trips, and created moments that had once seemed impossible. Every conversation, every laugh, every quiet evening together became a testament to resilience and enduring love. The past had come for me relentlessly, yet by confronting it fully, I discovered something profound. Mistakes could not define me, but my responses to them could. Love, honesty, and courage could withstand even the darkest shadows. Standing with Emily on the balcony one evening, watching city lights reflect in puddles on the streets below, I realized that I had finally learned to live without running, to trust without fear, and to face whatever consequences remained with integrity and determination. And as Emily leaned her head on my shoulder, holding my hand, I knew that the life we were building, fragile but real, could endure. The past, though always present, would no longer dictate our future. Love, honesty, and courage would guide us forward, and together we could face anything, survive everything, and find peace in a life reclaimed from the shadows of old mistakes. The weeks after the confrontation with my past settled into a quiet rhythm. The apartment, once heavy with tension and secrets, now felt like a sanctuary. Emily and I moved carefully, intentionally, rebuilding routines and trust. Each morning I would wake to the soft light spilling across the room, to the hum of her presence, and for the first time in years I didn't feel the weight of unseen eyes on me. Natalie's scrutiny had softened, replaced with cautious observation. Her mother's quiet vigilance remained, but even that felt less like judgment and more like guidance. They had seen that I was committed, not perfect, never perfect but honest, willing to face consequences and determined to protect the people I loved. And that was enough. The messages from the past stopped entirely. No more warnings, no more cryptic photos, no more reminders that mistakes lingered in corners I could not see. I realized that the storms I had feared were not gone, they had simply lost their power over me. I had faced them, confronted them, and survived. The past could exist, but it could no longer dictate my life. Emily and I found joy in the small, ordinary moments, cooking together, walking through the city streets on rainy nights, laughing over silly arguments that were once unthinkable. Each day felt like a gift reclaimed, a chance to shape a life free from shadows. I learned to breathe without fear, to love without hesitation, and to trust without reservation. One evening, as the sun dipped low behind the skyline, Emily and I stood on our balcony, holding hands. The city shimmered beneath us, reflections dancing in puddles from the day's rain. We've been through so much, I said softly. I thought I'd never find peace again. Emily rested her head against my shoulder. We've survived it, she said. Together, and now we can finally live. I felt the truth of it in every bone, every heartbeat. Life would never be perfect, and the past would always remain a part of me, but for the first time, I believed that we could face whatever came next without fear. The mistakes, the secrets, the betrayals, they were all chapters of my story, yes, but they no longer define the ending. We had learned that love is stronger than fear, honesty stronger than deception, and courage stronger than regret. In Emily, I found my anchor. In the life we were building together, I found hope. And in the quiet of that evening, holding her hand and watching the world glow below, I finally understood what it meant to move forward, whole, present, and free from the shadows that had once controlled me. The past had arrived, tried to unravel me, and reminded me of everything I feared. But it had also taught me how to stand, how to love, and how to protect what truly mattered. And for the first time, I knew with certainty, the life ahead was ours to shape, and nothing, not guilt, not fear, not the echoes of old mistakes, could take that away. We turned inside together, closing the door on the weight of the past, letting the quiet of the apartment and the warmth of our shared life carry us forward. And in that moment I realized this was more than survival. It was redemption. It was love. And it was finally truly peace.